most of these ADPs, as you see the list with the running backs and where they're getting drafted in NFFC leagues over the past 2 weeks, there's two in particular, Trey Sermon and Javonte Williams, as you see in Yahoo leagues, just buried down depth charts. No, not everybody, draft boards rather, not everybody is drafting NFFC leagues, high stakes leagues. I think most casual fantasy players are drafting on Yahoo or ESPN or Fantrax or CBS, maybe Sleeper. And I've noticed, I just scanned all those sites and I just went and I decided to just pick a couple that I feel like are buried down just in case you enter your draft. If you haven't done a draft on Yahoo and you're like, oh, where's Sermon or where's Williams, or heck, I want to take a late flyer on James White or maybe Tevin Coleman as a week one starter. These dudes are absolutely buried down lists. So we get through this list here and it starts with David Montgomery as running back 15, Miles Sanders at running back 19, Damian Harris, RB 28. Over the last 3 weeks in NFFC drafts, RB 28. Now, some of that are drafts with Sony Michel on the squad. Others, I even went back and looked over the past 7 to 10 days, and it's still roughly RB 28. I think RB 26 to be exact. So he hasn't moved up all that much, but I'll be honest, like he's going to be one of the bigger risers now that people see that Cam Newton is not on the team. But as I said in the first segment, I think it's something that, we had to see coming at some point. Trey Sermon, RB 31, Yahoo. In NFFC leagues, he's RB 26. Javonte Williams, RB 33 in Yahoo leagues. On average, this guy is getting drafted, borderline a top 100 pick, but over in NFFC leagues over the last month, he is RB 20. So there's a mass difference there, and I didn't want to put him as a value at RB 20 because I don't think he's a value at under 20. I don't think he's undervalued there, but in Yahoo leagues, ESPN leagues, CBS leagues, going outside the top 30 at the running back position, he's undervalued in those formats. So just maybe if you're drafting in those leagues, you get in there and you put some guys in your queue because they are buried down the list. Jamal Williams, RB 37 in NFFC leagues over the last 3 or 4 weeks. Devin Singletary, RB 41. Sony Michel, RB 42. He hasn't moved a whole lot since the trade, to be honest. James White, RB 51, and then Tevin Coleman in there as well. So for David Montgomery, he's I could have went with Nick Chubb. I could have went with Joe Mixon, who I have both running backs I think are undervalued slightly. But I went with David Montgomery here as RB 15, as somebody who was a top 5 running back last year in PPR formats and half-point formats. He had a career year across the board. He was very strong. He was catching balls to the backfield, 1,000 yards on the ground. Yeah, he took advantage of a very soft schedule towards the end of the season, but that doesn't matter. There's other backs that had soft schedules that didn't take advantage. I think the biggest thing here for Dave Montgomery, when we project this season compared to last, is that we have to downgrade him just a little bit through the air. He's not going to have the same usage through the air. They went in and acquired Damian Williams, who is another guy that is absolutely getting buried down draft boards. I have him here, ADP, or Yahoo has him ranked as 326 overall. Like he's going as a top 60, 55 running back in full point settings. So I guess another guy, if you're playing in a PPR league, that you can consider later on down your draft. But David Montgomery, he's the lead. I know that Justin Fields could take some rushing attempts and people are worried about that, but we've had conversations on the show. Again, I'll bring up Emory Hunt, who, is a great example of, running. He gave like 3 or 4 examples of running backs who are playing with dual threat quarterbacks and lanes open up. He mentioned Mark Ingram when he first went to Baltimore, had arguably his best season of all time with Lamar Jackson. Other running backs, Miles Sanders, he brought up in a very small sample, but Miles Sanders in parts of 4 games with Jalen Hurts last year was very good. So for Montgomery, I wouldn't worry too much about the schedule that he took advantage of last season or the fact that Damian Williams is in the backfield and could steal a couple catches. Montgomery's a very good pass catcher, and I think Matt Nagy fell into just realizing that because Tariq Cohen, who is also a very good pass catcher, was sidelined last year. I think he suffered the knee injury around week 4. And then Dave Montgomery from week 4 on, he was neck and neck with Derrick Henry in a PPR setting. Now, Henry doesn't catch a lot of passes either, and Montgomery's caught a lot of passes, but he was still neck and neck with him. He's like 10 fewer fantasy points from week 4 on. Like it's pretty significant. That's good company. Even if you're not catching a lot of balls out of the backfield, still finishing as a top 5 running back in PPR formats. The same can be said for a running back catching a lot of balls out of the backfield, finishing as a top 5 running back in PPR formats. He is undervalued, and there's just no other way around it. Now, if you want to start wide receiver, and Montgomery in the second or in the third rather, I think that's a good start. But if you start wide receiver, running back, and Montgomery is your two, I think you're laughing. I think that's good. You're set up pretty nicely. Miles Sanders as well. I am concerned that he won't catch a lot of balls out of the backfield. But what I will say about Miles Sanders here is 2 years ago, he was one of 4 running backs to have at least 4.6 yards per carry, 50 catches, 500 receiving yards, and 800 rushing yards. It was good company as well. It was Alvin Kamara was in there, Christian McCaffrey was in there, and Dalvin Cook. So he caught a lot of passes as a rookie. Last season, he just dropped a lot, and then here in camp, he's dropping a lot of passes as well. Kenneth Gainwell is a really nice pass-catching running back that could steal a few third-down reps from him, and Boston Scott's still on this roster. I still think that Miles Sanders can catch maybe 25 to 30 balls. He's going to be the lead there. I have no worries about him being the lead there. He was among the leaders in yards per attempt. He has been since he's entered the league. He's a very strong running back. He has upside to be a borderline RB1 for you if you could just catch a few balls out of the backfield. And talk about 50-yard touchdowns. He's got 5 of them in the last 2 years. There's only 3 running backs that have at least 5. Good. Again, good company, Derrick Henry and Nick Chubb. So he's very explosive, and maybe Jalen Hurts can open up a few lanes. And that offensive line is coming into this season healthy. Last year it wasn't 12 different offensive line combinations for the first 12 games in NFL record. So coming in with a better offensive line. Damian Harris, I like Harris. Make him a target of yours. Explosive runs. He was among the leaders in explosive runs last year, runs of at least 15 yards using data from FTN Fantasy. Trey Sermon and Javonte Williams. I would rather have Williams. I think he has a clearer path to leading this backfield. I'm not sold on Melvin Gordon. He had a decent year last year. He wasn't the lead last year. It was Phillip Lindsay at the start who was good and then suffered the injury, and then Melvin Gordon came in there. But I think Javonte Williams, RB20 is a bit of a reach. If you like him, you draft your guys. I'm fine with him as RB24, 25. But again, in Yahoo leagues as RB33, it's an absolute steal. Sermon, I think, is a value in Yahoo. And I also am interested in Mostert. I think both of those guys will be involved in a committee all year long. And I think they're both valuable. I think both guys could be plugged in at times as an RB2 or as a flex. Jamal Williams, have just not sold on DeAndre Swift. They brought in Williams. It's a good offensive line. And I think Williams will have a lot of play. I think it will be a committee in Detroit, but keep in mind, there's not a lot of touchdowns to be had with the Lions. Devin Singletary, the difference between him and Zach Moss is something that we've talked about a lot on this show, is Moss is a back that's going earlier. Singletary is a back that's going later and outperformed him last season, is a back that's going to get more targets and more catches. And Buffalo just doesn't really run the football. They just don't. They haven't ran it all that much, even in preseason. They went into a playoff game last year where they didn't run the ball once in the first half. Maybe once, but I don't think they ran it once. They just like to throw. So why draft Zach? I think both are off my radar, to be honest. But Devin Singletary is the undervalued back in the backfield. It's not Zach Moss. I can't draft a running back that's going to average 8 carries per game. And I think that's what Zach Moss will average. Sony Michel, I think he's a great target outside of RB40. He could potentially lead the backfield with the Rams. We've had the conversation on the show before. Tevin Coleman is just a guy that I think could start right away. I think Ty Johnson as well is an undervalued running back. Long term, I don't view them as great targets, but short term, depending on how your draft goes, you can never have too much running back depth on your fantasy squad. Tevin Coleman is going to get the first down reps right away. And then James White is just always undervalued, especially in PPR formats. He's going to be involved. This guy catch 3 or 4 passes out of the backfield here and there. He's going to have his games. He is going to play a lot of third down for the Pats. And then a couple other guys just really rapid fire through. I mentioned Ty Johnson. 278 is where he's ranked in Yahoo. An absolute steal is like your late round pick, could fall into more touches. It's going to take some time for Michael Carter. It's Ty Johnson, who was splitting first and second down reps with Coleman, and Coleman very familiar with Robert Saleh, coach of the Niners, defensive coach of the Niners last year, coached against Tevin Coleman in practice, coach of the Jets here this year in year 1, and brought in Coleman. So obviously he likes Coleman, knows what he can do, and knows that he can understand the playbook. But Johnson is a guy who's getting some third down reps as well. And Michael Carter was just kind of taking that backseat. I think he could play out a lot like Cam Akers, maybe not as successful towards the end of the season, but somebody who can step in and be a guy towards the later part of the year. But Ty Johnson and then Ramondre Stevenson, 294 is his rank on Yahoo.